Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we do have a yellow warning for rain in the north over the course of tomorrow. We'll have a look at the precipitation and the temperature from the UKV as it's turning a lot colder next week, return of frost and fog overnight and generally colder temperatures, and then we'll have a look at the longer range, look at the GFS, GEM, ECMWF and the ensembles as it's looking increasingly likely the first 10 days of December is going to be very cold. There's potential for widespread colder conditions with frost, fog, and then there is the potential for some winteriness as well in sort of the 10 to 14 day time frame. The air masses to our east are not ridiculously cold at the moment, but if we did keep this blocked pattern that's looking highly likely to prevail next week, it could start to drag in some real cold air in the longer term, and that's what we're starting to see from some of the models, with there potentially being some real snow events and winteriness as we head towards the middle of December, so in the sort of 10 to 20 day time frame. That is what we're keeping an eye on for proper winteriness. So next week it's just going to be turning generally colder and more frosty as the higher pressure block builds in. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now to start on the live radar, you can see a bit of precipitation across Scotland and some heavy rain there across the central belt, but most areas are pretty dry today. A few showers across Wales and Northern Ireland, but it's a generally drier day. But big precipitation will be moving in over the course of this weekend as well, before it does start to dry up next week. If you look at the temperatures, as I'm recording this around 1:30, you can see those temperatures today are not particularly cold, but not particularly mild either, sort of around average this time of year, around that sort of 10-11 degree high temperature, and areas further northward slightly cooler. But again, nothing too cold, but it will be turning increasingly colder next week. More blues on this map, and a lot of those lighter blues, especially overnight, with temperatures looking likely to be falling well below freezing in quite a few areas where we see clearer skies towards the start of next week. Now, if we do go over to the weather warnings, you can see there is a rain warning from 12 p.m. tomorrow until midnight. Heavy rain may lead to some flooding and travel disruption. Again, 20 to 30 millimetres, possibly 45. Again, I don't think this would warrant yellow warning in normal times, but we've had a lot of rain recently, very saturated ground, and that's why we've got a rain warning. High likelihood, lower end of the impact matrix. So if you now have a look at the precipitation temperature from the UKV today, you can see over the course of this afternoon those showers in the north giving way to dry conditions overnight, but heavier rain does push in through tomorrow morning, especially in the west, for moving more widespread. So tomorrow looks quite a washout for many western areas, and then turning more of a washout for eastern areas through the late afternoon into the evening. That rain will eventually spread through, and by Sunday we're all a bit drier. A few showers then pushing into the north and west could be quite heavy there, and through Sunday evening some more rain pushing up into the southeast, again could be quite heavy and could cause some issues as we've had a lot of rain there recently. Beyond that, just continued shower activity, and into Monday, again, a few showers around, but it's starting to turn drier. We see that trend continue into Tuesday, very dry, and that's because higher pressure is building in. You can see by Wednesday as well, early hours of Wednesday, very dry as well, and that wind is starting to veer in from the east. Nothing particularly cold arriving yet, but you'll see when we look at the 2 metre temperatures, it's going to be turning colder and frostier as well. If you look at those max temperatures, you can see over the course of this afternoon temperatures around that sort of 10 to 12 degree range, and overnight tonight into the early hours of tomorrow, you can see potentially only dropping down sort of 6 to 8 degrees, so not particularly cold at all. And by Saturday afternoon, you can see again maybe 10 to 12 degrees. As we head beyond that into Sunday, again, see those temperatures overnight not dropping much below sort of 8 or 9 degrees in some areas, colder in others, and by Sunday afternoon, maybe again 10 to 12 degrees. But it's next week, that's when things are turning much colder. Through Sunday night, again, nothing particularly cold, but as we head into Monday afternoon, again, a couple of degrees colder, maybe 8 or 9 degrees. But Monday night, look at that, more blue showing up low single digits, if not towards freezing further westwards and northwards, under more of higher pressure. And for Tuesday in the day, struggling to sort of 5 or 6 degrees in many areas, maybe max 7 or 8 in the south and the east. And overnight into Wednesday, again, widely towards the low single digits, if not towards freezing. And by this time, the upper air temperatures around freezing, maybe -1. We haven't even got any proper cold air in, and you can already see those frosts starting to appear by the early hours of Wednesday. And it would just be turning much colder like that as we head through the rest of next week and start December. And you can see this even better by having a look at the longer range, look at the GFS, GEM, ECMWF, and the ensembles, as it's looking highly likely we go into a much colder pattern, and potentially very cold pattern, in sort of the 10 to 14 day time frame. Now you can see westerly winds at the moment, so nothing ridiculously cold, and then eventually higher pressure does start to build in next week. As the higher pressure builds in, it moves to our north and tries to pull an easterly wind in. The GFS today is a little bit unsuccessful with that, actually, and sends a bit milder. But we'll be seeing that this is a bit of an outlier, and that easterly wind that eventually does push in comes in a lot earlier on the other runs and on some members. So we eventually get an easterly wind in, and it starts to go very cold, and all the way into the longer term, we see that blocking to the north, low pressure sliding to our south, and this is the sort of pattern where we would see cold air dig in, low pressure run into it, and this could start to produce snow events, especially in the north, but if we did start to see some much colder air masses spread in, potentially in the south and to low-lying areas as well. So GFS, a little bit of an outlier today in terms of holding off that easterly for a time, but still it's blocked and it's generally cold, especially in the longer term. So yeah, again, we're going to still see volatility, but the general trend of blocking and cold weather is still here from even an anomalous GFS run. If you look at the GEM, you'll see that low pressure is running in off the Atlantic at the moment. High pressure is ridging to our north, and look, it pulls an easterly wind in as soon as next Thursday. Quite a cold easterly wind as well, and that continues all the way to day 10, and we stay on a stubborn easterly wind. And you can see that wind is starting to veer more northeasterly with high pressure retrogressing towards Greenland, and again, it's that 10 to 14 day time frame. Sort of 5 days beyond this run, that's when we could be going extremely cold. Look at the upper air temperatures. You can see we do get the -5 line in for a time, but some milder air does spiral around. But look at all this cold air towards Scandinavia, day 10, and Eastern Europe that's getting pushed by the blocking. As I said, the near continent is not particularly cold this time of year, or at least this year is not particularly cold. And that basically means that the air we're getting in from the east is chilly and below average, but nothing ridiculously cold. And we need much colder air to get dragged out of the Arctic for us to see anything incredible or anything really wintry. And that could happen in the longer range. The shorter range is just generally colder, maybe some wintriness mixing in at times. So again, we need to keep our eye really peeled on that sort of 10 to 14 day and potentially beyond, as if this blocking persists, like the models are making it out to be, that could send us extremely cold towards around maybe the 10th of December. But for the time being, it's something much colder. Easterly winds can feel really chilly, and potentially, depending on the exact ensemble run and exact operational run you look at, could be going quite cold, really quite cold, with upper air temperatures getting as low as maybe -7 or -8 on the most extreme ensemble members, and more of the moderate ones more towards average in terms of the easterly flow. But regardless, it's going to feel chilly. If we have a look at the ECMWF, we have to look at the midnight run, as it doesn't run out to 240 hours on the 6 o'clock run. Again, you can see westerly wind coming in at the moment, high pressure building to our north, easterly winds, huge easterly winds pushing in around end of next working week. And just look at huge high pressure systems tumbling in with huge easterly flow. Again, the high pressure is there nudging more towards Greenland. Look at all of that extremely cold air to our east. So the ECMWF is nudging that real cold air mass from the Arctic our way at day 10, so even earlier than the GEM and the GFS. See, all three runs today, all slightly different. All got the blocking involved though, all got cold air masses pushing in, or at least below average air masses pushing in, and all have the potential in the longer terms, the 10, sort of 14 day time frame and beyond, to produce something extremely cold. And that is really what we're going to be keeping our eyes peeled on over the next week or so. Now, if we do finish the video, have a look at the ensembles. And can see it's generally mild over the next 2 or 3 days before it turns much colder, well below average for the foreseeable future. Yes, some runs, including the operational run, a little bit anomalous, heading above average, but most around that sort of freezing to -5 point. As I said, some are going much lower, and around that 10th of December point, that's when we're seeing some really cold air masses move in, some of the -5 to -10 area, which gives the possibility of widespread wintriness. So we have to see exactly what happens. Drier as well, so indicative of higher pressure building in. So that's one positive coming from this. Yes, it's turning colder, but at least it will be a little bit drier, or overall drier. There will still be cloud, and there will still be showers from the easterly wind, and potentially low pressures developing, but it will generally be drier. You can see again, look at the dew points, how it is turning increasingly colder towards freezing now around the 10th of December showing. And of course, you need freezing dew points to see wintry weather. And again, if we compare it to the ECMWF in the longer term, look at the upper air temperatures and the precipitation, you'll be able to see, once again, if we do get this to load, There we go, below average. A little bit more pessimistic, these seem to have more above average, but generally still a colder trend and drier trend in the longer term. So we're still on course for seeing some much colder weather next week. Again, nothing ridiculous within the sort of the 7-day time frame, but much more seasonable, much colder, and a lot of frosts around, and generally colder weather. It's that longer term, the day 10 to day 14 time frame, as we head towards probably the 10th of December, where real interest is for something a lot colder, something that is very unusual for this time of year. So we'll have to see exactly how it does play out, but the cold weather continues within the model outputs, huge blocking, and this is something that we have alluded to over a number of weeks, a number of months really now, with our winter look ahead. So it is nice to be seeing that come into fruition, and that sort of a longer range trends were correct. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.